Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you don't know who I am, my name is Edith and I like to read books and yab about them to you guys. And today's video is a little bit different than what I kind of promised. I'm making kind of a series of me preparing for fall, and in the first episode I said that there was only going to be two and that it was going to be what last video was, which if you haven't seen that one, pause this one, go watch that one first, because that one was my own autumn TBR plus a little bit of journaling, reading journal and stuff like that. And in that video I said that the next one was going to be recommendations plus decorating. We're actually going to split that into two. So today's video I'm going to be giving you guys some recommendations. This right here is only one out of two piles I have in front of me of book recommendations. I do have a few from Kindle that I'm not gonna mention. I'm gonna maybe put, because I have like 3 when I look through everything, so I might put them in like the description or something. But the recommendations I'm gonna be mentioning in this video are purely looking at my shelves and picking out every single book I felt like could count as fall reading, except for all my thrillers, horror books and stuff like that, because that is going to be a future video when we get a little bit closer to October, spooky month, which is when that will make sense. Without further ado, let's just get right into it. First, we have a book by my very favorite author, and I only picked one book by her that I felt like really fits the fall vibe, whereas her other books fit kind of like a summer vibe. Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which, funny enough, this is actually her debut novel. I didn't know that, so fun fact for you guys. And like a lot of these books, which is why I feel like it fits the fall vibe for some reason, this is so sad. Basically, we kind of follow 2 different timelines. In one timeline, we have Elsie who meets Ben. They fall in love very quickly, get married, all of that. In the next timeline, a few days after they've been married, Ben goes for a bike ride to get her cereal and dies. And so we follow them falling in love, all of that towards them getting married, and then we follow Elsie in her grief, meeting his mother for the first time, even though his mother knew nothing of her, and kind of like how their grief kind of interlaces, mixes, whatever. And I thought this was, like all Taylor Jenkins Reid books, amazingly beautifully written. The storyline is so sad, but also so interesting and unique. I really enjoyed this one. And then Girl in Pieces. Again, this is purely because it is a sad book, and for some reason, I don't want to read sad books when it's like summertime and you're reading them outside. Sad books are for huddling on the couch with a blanket and a cup of tea in the fall time. This is, again, really heavy. Check trigger warnings for every single book by this author, but this one, for some reason, for me at least specifically, because it's about Charlotte Davis, who's 17 and does self-harm. I feel like I can say that. That is probably the biggest trigger warning for this book, is self-harm. And we follow her as she gets admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Is that what you call it? I read this so long ago, and I'm pretty sure we follow her through that experience, plus coming out on the other side and having to try and like get back into normal life. Okay, this was, again, so upsetting, but such beautiful writing. Even though it looks kind of big, it's really not that big, and the chapters are short, so it kind of goes by really fast, in my opinion, with her writing. In this one, I recommend in every single thing, and this, I actually didn't mention it in my TBR, but I do need to really try and get a reread done this fall, along with some annotations. The Perks of Being a Wallflower. If you have never heard about this, it's a very famous movie too, with Emma Watson. Basically, we follow Charlie through his, I think it's first year of high school, after he's also spent some time in a hospital because of a lot of things that happened. Again, check trigger warnings. This is a small one, which means it can be read quickly. I genuinely think you can sit down and read this in one sitting if you wanted to. And I just this book and the movie and everything just has such a special place in my heart, and I can't wait to own a fully annotated version of this. Another one you might be sick of hearing about, the Binding 13 books, The Voice of Tommen by Chloe Walsh. The entire series, 100%, but I will also say take your time with these. It took me a month, and maybe actually 2 months, with like a little bit of breaks to get through the second book in this series, and I honestly would never have gotten through it if I hadn't allowed myself to take my time getting through these. Again, heavy on the trigger warnings. You might read this one and then be like, okay, that wasn't that bad. Still keep checking trigger warnings because they do get a little bit worse. I still think the second one was the worst for me personally, but I definitely see where people are coming from saying that the later ones are worse. I definitely think trigger-wise, the latest one is the worst with how heavy it is, but I would still 100% recommend these. Just make sure you look out for your own mental health first. In these, we follow Johnny and Shannon, which don't let anybody tell you that this is a sports romance. It might have sports and it might have romance, but it is way too much more for that to be the thing that sells it. Shannon has a very hard time at home. Her dad is abusive, and she starts at Tommen College, which she goes to because she got bullied everywhere else, like hardcore bullying. I will never get over these two. And Johnny is just like a rugby lad who actually doesn't care about anything except rugby until he accidentally hits her in the head with a rugby ball and falls in love. Another one you might be tired of hearing about. I had to include some fantasy, and I don't own a lot of, I haven't actually read a lot of fantasy. That's the problem. But I'm getting into it this fall, so I needed to recommend some of the books me as a fantasy starter have loved. And that book is in fact Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is the Empyrean series, which is Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and Onyx Storm. And there are 2 more coming out. The next one is not going to be out until like a while. So if you can't wait for that, maybe don't read these right now. But if you can wait for that, read these right now. We meet Violet, who is supposed to be like she's supposed to like work in a library and write books and translate books and like be very literary, and then all of a sudden she's told she has to be a dragon rider, so she has to go through all of these tests that the dragon riders go through before they bond with a dragon and get into actually training to be a dragon rider. And Violet is very small, and her and Shannon are probably the only FMCs where I for now feel like it's never too much to emphasize how small they are, because they both have very valid reasons for it. Violet has some sort of disease and means that her like joints and bones are very weak, so having to do all of this training, she has to like find other ways to get good at stuff, and I kind of love that. Oh yeah, and in that entire thing, she meets Satan, whose dad was like the leader of the rebellion, and Violet's mom, I think, killed his dad. I don't remember. He hates her at the start of this. They kind of hate each other at the start of this, but yeah. And then when I recently read, which if you aren't new to fantasy, you would know about this, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. I would actually say in the fantasy realm, this leans more toward like summer and spring, but I will still recommend it for fall because I feel like that is when fantasy still hits the most. This is about Feyre, who hunts, and at one of her hunts, she shoots a wolf, which the wolf then turns out to be a fairy, which then leads to her being taken by one of the fairy like high lords to fairy lands, and then she has to live with him there. And I love Feyre so much. Yeah. Our last couple of fantasies, we actually have 2. What I wrote down as recommendations is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Again, if you know about this, you have probably been told that you don't have to read Shadow and Bone first. People love to say that. I don't think you have to read Shadow and Bone first. I think you should read Shadow and Bone first because I loved Shadow and Bone. And also because I feel like it's wrong to watch the Netflix show Shadow and Bone if you haven't read Shadow and Bone, but you just want to see the characters from this. It's not wrong per se, you can do it, but I would still 100% recommend this. Alina is a soldier, but while she has to cross over this kind of dangerous part of the country, something attacks and she ends up unleashing some magic she had no idea she had, and now she has to figure out what that magic is and kind of navigate the new world of being like a magic being. Six of Crows is in the same universe, but like kind of like a totally different place, about a group of people, kind of like thieves and outlaws and stuff like that bands together to complete a heist. I feel like that's all I have to say to like put in the intrigue. This was amazing. I liked this series. I loved this series, and I can't wait to continue my Le Bardugo journey. And then, last but not least for fantasy, the entire Hunger Games series. I'm not going to say much about what this is about because you should know. But it is about the Hunger Games, which a lot of years ago there was a war where after the war they ended up getting split into these sections, and Panem is kind of like the White House of America. Totally, actually. And basically every single year, just to remind these people of the war, they take 2 kids, a boy and a girl, from the age of like 12 to 19 into the Hunger Games, where they then fight to the death in a TV show that then gets broadcasted to the entire world, basically. And for the recommended reading order, for me, personally, I will hold on to the fact that you need to read the 3 original first, then The Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes, then Sunrise on the Reaping. Read them in the way they were published, because they were published like that for a reason. And then we have a single little itty bitty nonfiction. I'm Glad My Mom Died. I will forever recommend this as a nonfiction. Even if you don't like nonfiction, please go read this. It's also being made into a movie, if that is going to convince you to do that. If you don't know Jennette McCurdy, she was in a lot of Nickelodeon shows. Mostly, she's famous for playing Sam in Sam and Cat and iCarly. And basically, she's glad her mom died. That's the premise. And then a classic, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I was so surprised by this. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in my first video I ever posted, which was an end of the year book tag. I don't typically read classics. I have not loved classics before. I read this and I loved it. It got me out of a reading slump. Again, it is quick, short, and kind of easy. I feel like a lot of classics, that's where they lose me, is they're not easy reads. This was an easy read. Even if you are not a classics reader, I would still 100% recommend this. One I feel like isn't talked about enough at all. I actually never think I've heard anybody talk about the book. Wonder by R.J. Palacio. See, this is why half the time I don't say authors' names, because I'm so scared of pronouncing anything wrong. But Wonder. Again, this is also a movie. It's kind of an old movie, I think. The book in itself is from 2012. I'm pretty sure the movie is from like 2016 or something. But this is beautiful. This is YA, which is not my preferred genre at all, but this is just so beautiful. I did watch the movie first and knew I loved it, so kind of went into this expecting to love it. We follow Augie, who has had a bunch of surgeries, 27, I think he says, since he was born, basically just to be able to see, hear, breathe, live. And now we follow him in his first year of school ever, because he's been homeschooled until now. And we kind of follow him between making friends, getting bullied, kind of like finding his place in the world. And my brain kind of can't help but mix this and the movie together. I kind of feel like the movie was a great representation of this book. Like, it really fit overall. And Augie, I would literally punch one of his bullies in the face, even though that is a kid we're talking about. The Women by Kristin Hannah. This is also my only Kristin Hannah book I've read so far. I'm pretty sure I read it in January for a reading vlog, and I absolutely loved this. Again, this is only on here because it's kind of sad. It's about women in the Vietnam War and kind of how they weren't seen, you know? I figured out from this book that apparently a lot of people were saying back then that there were no women in Vietnam, even though every single nurse, almost every single nurse, is a woman, or was a woman, and therefore it's like, who do you think sewed up your friends when they were getting bombed to pieces? Men? No. Honestly, this was just such a really empowering, beautiful story filled with female friendship and a little bit of romance, but not at all the focus of the book. The focus is 100% the female friendship, and I love that. Another one I've heard almost no one talk about that I enjoyed more than I thought I would. The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams, which I, again, don't really hear that much about. I really don't. I wasn't expecting to like it, and I actually really liked it. But this is sort of based on reality. Esme helps, or like spends her time growing up with her dad, who is one of the people who helped write the Oxford Dictionary, which back then that was, everybody was sending in words left and right trying to explain them, and then they decided which words went into the dictionary and which did not. And during her time there growing up, she slowly starts finding these words that no one ever wanted to put in the dictionary. She talks to people from around the world, and they tell her words that she knows aren't in the dictionary. And they all seem to have the one thing in common, that they somehow explain something to do with women. Something that maybe would help people understand women if they could have these words. So she ends up making her own dictionary with all of these words. The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. Again, check your trigger warnings. That has changed color. And unfortunately, this is not my only book. I can actually show you guys. And I have no idea what that is from, except I think I do. I think it's from The Sun. But that is actually really upsetting, because I love this book. And now it looks weird. Whatever. Check your warnings. This is about Eden, who gets sexually assaulted by her brother's best friend. And then we follow her the 3 years after that, which is the 3 years of high school, and how she, I wouldn't say deals with it. She deals with it towards the end, but the first few years are definitely a lot of just trying to survive, living with all of this trauma, and not really knowing who to talk to about it. And this was, again, a beautiful, beautiful story. I loved this book so much, and I wish I could give Eden the biggest hug in the world and kick a bunch of other people's asses. Tell Me I'm an Artist, another one that never gets talked about. I posted this in a reading vlog, reading books that I knew nothing about, and I loved it. We follow Joey, who is at an art school in San Francisco. She has to do a big assignment. I'm pretty sure it's like her final assignment. Their final assignment is to make a self-portrait, and she decides to remake Rushmore, the movie, even though she's never seen it. Which makes no sense, and I wouldn't actually say that sounds very intriguing. This is definitely more of like a character-focused study book, but I loved it. I thought it was really interesting. I thought there were some great insights into some different things, and I think even if you're not an artist, which I'm not at all actually, I 100% could see you really enjoying this anyway. Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart, which I've actually mentioned this in the video before, where I also covered the cover. There's actually nothing wrong with the cover. It is just two men kissing, but it's two men kissing very, very aggressively, which I wouldn't show it if it weren't two men. I wouldn't show it if it was a woman and a man either. So just know there's absolutely nothing homophobic about the fact that I'm covering this up. I don't like this cover. but I love this book. We follow Mungor and James. One of them is a Protestant and the other one is Catholic, and they fall in love. Again, check your trigger warnings. This is so sad. It's so sad. It's so sad and triggering. And okay, I'm just gonna pull it down for 2 seconds. It's so sad and triggering, and yet it's just, I wouldn't even say it's a beautiful story, because it's just sad. It's just depressing. Be prepared for that. It is just depressing all the way through. And again, check trigger warnings. That's like the new saying, and from this video is just check trigger warnings. Guess you could tell, fall in my eyes are used to just be for sad, serious books. This year, they're going to be for sad, serious books and fantasy. Last but not least, Anxious People by Fredrik Backman, which, again, only Fredrik Backman book I have read, but I feel like this specifically gives very fall vibes. I would, again, a little bit say check trigger warnings, not as violently as like the other ones, but still, this is about a bank robbery. Yeah. It actually takes place on New Year's Eve, so maybe you want to save it until winter, but I feel like you can read it even though it's not. But New Year's Eve, there is a open house going on, and then a bank robber accidentally stumbles into this open house and takes all the people hostage. By accident, 100% by accident. And then you kind of get like an insight into all of these people's lives and what they actually have going on. And it's kind of like this, you never know what a person has going on, and just people always have their own stuff going on. That's kind of like the focus, but it's written in such a unique, special way. I did love it. With that said, we're out of recommendations. That was really cool, and I hope you guys read some of these books. If you do, comment down below, or like if you're planning on reading any of them, comment that down below. If you have read any of them, comment that down below. If you're like, okay, you recommended this book, but I would actually save it for this time of year, write that down too. Any kind of comment, literally. You guys could comment down below and call me ugly and annoying to listen to, and I would still just be happy you commented. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give it a like, subscribe, turn on your bell notifications so you get notified next Saturday when I do post my decorating video. And yes, I will in fact be filming it in the middle of August, even though it won't be posted until September. But I officially have kind of decided that I can't wait anymore. So stick around for that video. And if you haven't seen last Saturday's video, which was my own TBR, go watch that one. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.